He came into this world weak as hell. But once the strongest SS rank mage took him in, things changed. The kid had nothing going for him but pure grit. Went through brutal training day and night. Body pushed to the edge, but willpower never broke. Years went by and the same boy who couldn't even cast a basic spell turned into someone you don't want to mess with. Not even his master knew it. But buried deep inside him was a dark magic strong enough to flip the whole damn world upside down. A kind of power that stuns anyone who sees it. It kicks off in a wrecked city, where this woman spots a boy named Lloyd just standing there, staring at something. We don't know what he's looking at yet, but she sees something in him. She figures if this kid joins her, she might have a shot at taking down the demon lord. Without holding back, she pulls him in for a hug, while he's still standing there spaced out. Not long after that, she takes him back to her place and casually shows him some fire magic flames shooting straight out of her hand. Lloyd's eyes go wide. This is the first time he's seen anything like it. But the woman doesn't wait around for awe. She tells him flat out to do the same, or he's not eating that night. He doesn't have a clue what he's doing, no instructions, no idea how magic even works, but he gives it a shot. By the time the day ends, the kid somehow manages to summon a small flame. She's a little impressed, but not nearly enough. Instead of praise, she lights him up in flames, reminding him that he's still got a long road ahead. The next day, she teaches him how to pull water out of the ground with a kick. First try, Lloyd nails the move, but all he gets is wet dirt. She's not impressed and punishes him by soaking him completely. She throws wind magic into the mix too. And as the training keeps going, within just a few months, Lloyd's already pulling off ice magic like a pro dude, makes a full ice statue that looks exactly like her. Lloyd, thinking he's finally earned some respect, starts calling her his master. But she still ain't satisfied. She thinks he's still weak, so to prove how far he's got to go, she makes the statue grab him with magic, then grows it bigger before smashing it to bits. Seeing the power difference firsthand, Lloyd decides to push even harder, doubling down on his training without taking breaks. Then one day, she drinks too much and ends up sick as hell. Lloyd walks up and heals her in a flash. Turns out, she even taught him healing magic somewhere along the way. She gives him a hug for that, but then goes right back to her usual self, saying it still ain't enough, and sends him off for more training. After months of non-stop training, Lloyd's master is sitting with a grimoire in her hands, looking uneasy. Something in that book's clearly bothering her, and before she can even process it, Lloyd walks into the room. The grimoire slips right out of her hands, and when he picks it up to give it back, something triggers the moment he touches it. His body drops instantly. Kid faints on the spot. That's when she realizes Lloyd's got the potential to be one of the chosen two. The way she mutters it sounds like she's a chosen one herself, though it's not crystal clear. Either way, she doesn't want him ending up like her. She's seen what overconfidence can do, so while he's knocked out, she kisses his forehead and slips a spell on him, one that probably keeps his powers in check. Next morning, she brings up something new, calls him a white mage, says that kind of mage focuses on helpful magic, stuff that benefits others. To get him started, she tells him to use his healing magic on an apple tree to grow a bigger apple. He does it, and it works, but then she casually shows off and makes the whole tree pop with apples like it's nothing. Later that night during their lesson, Lloyd gets curious about something called ancient magic. Soon as he brings it up, his master shuts it down, tells him that kind of magic disappeared ages ago and he doesn't need to bother with it. Instead, she keeps him moving forward, teaching him advanced stuff like space magic, basically the power to summon or unsummon items anytime you want. Training picks up speed, and one day she decides it's time to really push him. She blindfolds the kid, dumps him deep in some forest full of monsters, hands him a tiny kitchen knife, and tells him to survive for a whole week using magic alone. Then, with zero hesitation, she vanishes in a flash, leaving Lloyd behind terrified and lost. A few seconds later, a wolf monster shows up, charging straight at him. Lloyd panics and runs for his life, eventually scrambling up a tall tree to catch his breath. While catching his nerves, he uses space detection and manages to locate his master's house far to the north, so he sets off on foot. When night hits, he uses healing magic on wild fruit to ripen it and eats that for dinner. He finds a cave to hide in and starts thinking of ways to boost himself. That's when he comes up with something smart. He takes the spells he already knows and tweaks them to raise his physical stats when he casts them. One by one, he starts building his magic up from scratch. The next morning, while walking through the woods, Lloyd accidentally wanders right into a queen spider's nest. Soon as that massive thing lunges at him, he turns and bolts the other way. With one of his modified spells, he kicks his speed up like crazy 10 times faster at least. In a single blur of a sprint, he makes it all the way back to his master's doorstep, then drops right there, out cold. She opens the door and sees him lying flat, and with a small grin, just says welcome home. Time goes by, and Lloyd starts growing taller. His master gives him a little more freedom to roam around the house, and one day while cleaning up her study, he finds a book about cities. The idea catches his attention since he's never been anywhere with that many people before. Meanwhile, his master's been getting creative, testing all sorts of weird stuff, and using him as her personal test dummy. Kid barely gets any real sleep for days. One morning, she wakes up like usual and heads up to the rooftop, planning to beat some magic into him again. But when she steps inside, Lloyd's not there. She glances around and notices the last thing he was doing reading that same book about cities. Her expression shifts for a second. Turns out, Lloyd's already made his way into town. He walks through the streets wide-eyed, amazed by how packed and noisy everything is. This is his first time seeing a place like this, so it's all new. He grabs a loaf of bread from a stall, but once he pays, he realizes he's completely broke, not even a single coin left. That's when a recruitment flyer for adventurers floats through the air and smacks him in the face. And he figures that might just be his shot. He heads off to sign up right away, not noticing the strange man watching him from the shadows with clear interest in his every move. Lloyd joins a new adventurers party, and not long after, they're heading up to the castle rooftop to take down a giant cyclops. Alan, the party leader, gets slammed and yells for Sheena, the healer, to patch him up. But just before she casts her spell, Lloyd drops one of his upgraded buff spells without saying a word. Suddenly, everyone starts feeling unstoppable. The archer nails the cyclops right in the eye, and the knight takes a punch straight on but holds her ground, surprised by how easy it was to block. Alan doesn't think twice, charges up, and takes the beast out in one clean hit. He's fully convinced he pulled it off with raw talent, but the knight glances at Lloyd and starts putting 2 and 2 together, like she knows something just doesn't add up. Now that the cyclops is down, the crew rides back into town, and Alan's getting the royal treatment. Folks can't stop cheering his name like he's some kind of legend, all because no one else had been able to take down the cyclops of Abadov Castle. The reward for the job turns out to be massive, but when it's time to split the cash, Alan tosses Lloyd 5 measly coins, saying that's all he gets since he's just a rookie D-rank adventurer. Lloyd takes the money without saying a word. When Alan suggests they toast to their victory, Lloyd politely dips out, saying alcohol's not his thing. That rubs the party's mage the wrong way. She gets all dramatic about him ditching the celebration. But Alan shrugs it off and says no big deal. They can always find another white mage if needed. And it's not like Lloyd did anything worth bragging about in the first place. Lloyd hears it all, but doesn't react. He closes the door behind him and walks away, calm as ever. Meanwhile, back at Merlin's house, the same guy who'd been tailing Lloyd earlier shows up. She calls him Willie and asks if there's any news. He tells her Lloyd made it to town and even joined the hero party. Merlin looks relieved, almost proud. She figured it was about time the kid stepped into the world on his own. As long as he doesn't end up cocky like she was back in the day, he'll be alright. Willie looks at her and asks if she still regrets what went down that day. Her face tightens, a flicker of guilt slipping through, and she remembers it clear as day. Back then, the Demon Lord was ready to blow himself up just to get his hands on that damn magic book. Merlin never saw it coming, and the explosion wiped out an entire village. Nobody stood a chance, including her. But somehow, Sybil, one of her teammates, pulled off a miracle with ancient magic and brought everyone back. Everyone but himself. He gave his life to fix what she couldn't, and that guilt's been hanging over her head ever since. Back on Lloyd's side, he's still with the hero party. Every time they're close to getting wrecked in a fight, he drops a clean buff on them, keeping the team running smooth like clockwork. Thanks to him, they're practically unbeatable, but nobody knows he's the reason they're cruising through every battle. Later that night, Rena's up reading about defense stats when Alan walks into her room. She tells him she's been wondering about something lately. The monster hits don't feel as hard on her shield, and she's not sure why. Alan says he's been feeling stronger too, figures it's just raw talent kicking in. But Rena shoots him a look and reminds him he hasn't trained in days, so whatever's going on, it's definitely not him leveling up on his own. At the same time, deep in the woods that night, a couple guards are finishing up their patrol when one of them suddenly screams in pain. His partner looks over and sees this massive golem towering above them, and in that split second, it hits him he's about to get killed doing a job that barely pays enough for lunch. By the next morning, the guard captain is already talking to Alan, asking for his help. Turns out the guys on patrol were killed in a brutal way, and they're guessing a golem was behind it. Alan, being Alan, says he'll take care of it. He figures a golem's no big deal. Later on, they head out to where it happened. Thanks to Lloyd's tracking magic, they manage to find the golem hiding out in a cave behind a waterfall. Since Lloyd's keeping everyone boosted, the whole team takes it down without breaking a sweat. But right after that, a demon shows up nearby and summons another one using rocks from the ceiling. Lloyd looks closer and notices the demon's using a staff with a magic stone embedded in it. That's a big red flag. Magic stones are bad news. He knows they gotta shut this down fast, so he buffs Lulu's accuracy and tells her to shoot the demon. She hesitates since the demon's behind a wall, but she fires anyway, and somehow the arrow lands. Then Lloyd tells Maya to teleport the staff to him, and once it's in his hands, he seals its magic right away. Alan's already fuming. He doesn't like being bossed around, especially not by the guy he thinks should be following orders. Trying to show who's in charge, he rushes forward, aiming to land the final hit on the golem. Lloyd sees it coming and knows Alan's about to get his head crushed, so he kicks in a speed spell and dives in, shoving Alan out of harm's way. But instead of a thanks, Alan snaps at him for getting in the way. He finishes off the golem himself, acting like he did it all solo. Back in town, he straight up kicks Lloyd out of the party, saying he's had enough of his attitude and claiming he's been useless the whole time. And after all those years hearing Merlin say he wasn't good enough, Lloyd starts to believe it. He doesn't argue, he just walks away quietly. The next few days are rough. Lloyd tries to find a new party, but no one's looking for a white mage, and most teams are already full. Things start to look hopeless until a girl named Yui rushes into the guild, needing a white mage fast. The receptionist points at Lloyd, and Yui turns to him, asks if he's not with anyone. When he says yes, she grabs his arm without wasting a second and takes off running with him like her life depends on it. A short time back, Lloyd was still dragging his feet around the city, head down and soul crushed after getting kicked out of the party by Alan. He kept hearing Alan's words echo in his head, saying he was nothing but dead weight. All he ever did was hide behind the others and toss out a few heals, and even Sheena could do a better job than that. Lloyd had asked if Alan seriously thought he was that useless, but Alan didn't even answer, just told him to believe whatever and get lost. As he walked off, the girls in the group didn't bother hiding how happy they were to see him gone. They were all smiles welcoming Rena. Throwing shade like Lloyd was some kind of joke they finally got rid of. Eventually, Lloyd made his way to the center of town and found himself staring up at a fountain. The statue on top looked exactly like his master, and that hit him right in the gut. He missed her, missed being trained, missed mattering to someone. Meanwhile, a different squad of adventurers was heading out to take down a bandit stronghold. This was no casual mission either, it was ranked A, so they had to keep it tight. Clum, the ginger in the group, looked off her game, distracted by something and clearly not feeling it. Still, once the battle kicked off, they went in hard before the bandits could even react. Silica, the mage, stepped up first, chanting loud as hell to prep her spell. One of the smarter bandits noticed and told his crew to wait it out till she was drained, then rush them. That was the plan, but they didn't count on Cross having her back. From way off, he fired a shot so clean it ran through a bunch of them at once. Their party was no joke. Yui, the sword fighter leading the team, held her own with no problem, even when she slipped. Dagas, the big guy with a shield, was there to cover her. Clum came through too, casting a buff that jacked up Dagas' strength, letting him smash through the front line like a beast. The bandit boss saw the tide turn and tried to make a break for it, but Yui was already in his face. She told him to stand down and not make it worse. He yelled at her to explain who the hell they were and why they stormed the place. But then he spotted the golden pendant on her chest. His face changed quick, he knew what that meant. She wasn't just tough, she was S-rank. Every single one of them was, which meant they weren't just here for a job, they were the kind of folks everybody respected and paid attention to. The boss bandit pulls out his final move, thinking that even if this crew's S-rank, there's no way they can handle what he's about to drop. He slams his staff to the ground and fires off a summoning spell, bringing up a massive golem straight from the earth. This thing's built to resist magic, which knocks Silica and Clum out of the fight completely. Even Cross knows his arrows won't do much against that kind of tank, so that leaves just Dagas and Yui to go toe-to-toe with it. Yui doesn't flinch. As team leader, she steps up and hits the golem head-on, slashing with full power. But the thing doesn't even blink. It tanks the hit like she tapped it with a stick. She yells for Clum to give her that power-up, but Clum's out of it again, totally zoned out. Yui has to scream at her before she finally reacts and casts the buff. That one spell kicks Yui's strength into overdrive, and with that boost, she cleaves the golem clean in half like it was made of paper. With the job wrapped up, they round up all the bandits, including their boss. Afterward, Yui pulls Clum aside for a talk. Clum straight up apologizes for blanking out and says she's not cut out to be an adventurer anymore. Yui gets it though. She knows Clum's mind's been on her sister Sylvie, and she asks how Sylvie's doing these days. But before Clum can even answer, the scene cuts to Lloyd again. It's been 3 days, and the poor guy still hasn't found a new party. He's posted up near the guild counter when someone starts yelling about needing a white mage. Turns out, it's Yui. Lloyd doesn't waste a second. He steps up and tells her he's a white mage, and Yui doesn't even ask for his rank. She grabs his wrist and drags him straight to her crew's base. Once there, she introduces him like he's already part of the team, even though he hasn't said yes. Her squad catches on quick, they've seen her do this before. Cross breaks it down for him, saying they've got a high priority mission and no time to replace Clum properly. They need someone fast. Nobody thinks Lloyd's the right pick, and truth be told, neither does Lloyd, especially after realizing this group's full of S-rank adventurers. Even though Lloyd's already given up on himself, Yui hasn't, and she straight up demands he show them what he can do. He's convinced he's gonna disappoint them, but decides to try anyway. First thing he does is pull a staff out using storage magic, and that alone makes everyone raise an eyebrow. Then, without chanting a word, he hits the whole squad with a physical boost. They don't feel much at first, but Yui swings her sword just to test it and slices through a tree like it's made of foam, leaving everybody wide-eyed. Lloyd casually explains that he didn't just cast one buff, he stacked 5 enhancement spells on top of each other, which is why Yui's power skyrocketed. That's enough to shut down any doubts they had. Clum's magic doesn't even come close to that level, but Lloyd still seems clueless about how insane his magic really is. He admits he used that many layers because he figured if he only did one, it wouldn't be enough for a top-tier team like theirs. He thought it'd come off as weak, and he wanted to make a good impression. Judging by their stunned faces, though, he assumes it flopped and what he did was average at best. Getting talked down to for too long can wreck a person, and right now Lloyd's confidence is in the gutter. He figures they weren't impressed and says he doesn't want to slow them down, so he turns around and starts walking off. For a second, nobody says a word, still trying to process what just happened. But Yui snaps out of it and yells his name loud enough to shake the place. He stops and walks back, just to see what she wants. That's when he opens up. He tells them where he came from and how the hero's team kicked him out for being useless. Yui's shocked he was ever part of that crew, but Lloyd downplays it. He says they don't need to be impressed and suggests they stick with their old white mage, instead it'd probably be better for all of them. They start telling him about Clum, how solid she is and how she used to run with them. But her sister Sylvie's been sick. Even while adventuring, Clum still looked after her, but lately she's been drained, and it's messing with her focus. Last time they fought, she zoned out and nearly got them all killed. Nobody blamed her, and they were fine keeping her around, but she got so anxious about being a burden that she walked away. Normally they can handle quests without a white mage, but when it comes to rank jobs, it's a different game. Clum wasn't just useful, she was family. Yui says she's been worried sick, and the rest of the team agrees. Lloyd sees how much they care and starts thinking maybe they saw her more as a sister than just a teammate. When they say yeah, he realizes how lucky she is to have folks like that, especially after what he's been through. He asks what kind of sickness Sylvie has and learns she's turning into a damn magic stone. That hits a nerve. He remembers reading something with his master about magic stones and asking if it was reversible. She said it was. That gives him a little hope, so he asks Yui to take him to Clum's place. They get to her house, she opens the door, and they sit down to talk. He asks her more about Sylvie's condition. Clum explains that both she and her sister used to take missions together, but on one of them, Sylvie got hurt. She wasn't there when it happened, just found her injured. Lloyd asks exactly how it started, and instead of explaining, Clum decides to show him. She takes them to Sylvie's room. As soon as the door opens, Lloyd feels the heavy magic pressure flooding out. Clum walks in and lifts the blanket. Sylvie's legs and hands are already stone. She says it's creeping through her body, little by little. Lloyd quietly tells her he thinks he can heal her. Clum doesn't buy it. She already tried every top-tier mage she could find, and none of them had answers. So she figures some random white mage won't either. But then Lloyd asks if the injury happened inside a cave, and Clum freezes before nodding. He checks the area where the transformation started and confirms what he suspected: the magic that hit her is still active, and it's slowly taking over her body. Clum's still unsure, but Lloyd says his master once told him this method could work. Yui backs him up, asking Clum to trust him, so she gives him the green light. He grabs his staff and starts casting a powerful spell that drains his energy fast. He explains that this magic is meant to calm down the storm of power building up inside Sylvie's body. That overflow is what's turning her to stone, so if he can suppress it, she might recover. Right after that, he hits her with a healing spell. Clum stares, wide-eyed, telling him this ain't some basic healing magic. He admits it's different, eats up way more mana than usual, but still insists it's just a normal healing spell. Yui turns to Clum and asks what she really thinks, and Clum can't lie, it's nothing close to ordinary. The wild part is that Lloyd's casting 2 spells at once and still holding it together like it's no big deal. Yui points out something even crazier: Sylvie's body is starting to return to normal. Clum rushes to grab her sister's hand as Sylvie slowly turns back to flesh. Everyone's stunned, then joy kicks in. Clum's overwhelmed with gratitude, but tells them she can't rejoin the party. Once Sylvie's better, they're going to hit the road together. She offers to treat them later to say thanks. She looks at Lloyd and says she knows they're in good hands with him, but he just shrugs and says he's not officially one of them yet, and that throws her off. He still doesn't see his worth. Later that night, they all head out for dinner. Yui brags about the insane magic Lloyd pulled and how Sylvie came back from the edge. Even with all the praise, Lloyd still feels like he's not enough, and that makes Yui cut in and tell him to quit being humble. He did something incredible, but he keeps brushing it off like it's nothing. He even apologizes for not convincing Clum to return. But that's not on their minds right now. They're here to celebrate, not stress. Talk shifts to what the future might look like, and Lloyd starts comparing how he used to feel with the heroes team to how he feels now. That's when he speaks up and says he wants in. The group freezes for a second, caught off guard since he turned them down earlier, but then they smile. Turns out they were hoping for this moment. Now he's officially one of them. Soon after, they throw a welcome party for Lloyd and tell him to eat all he wants since they're covering the tab tonight. He dives into the food like he hasn't eaten in weeks, and his new crew can't help but laugh watching him. They ask if he was starving or something, and Lloyd says the food in this town tastes incredible. That catches them off guard because the food here is known to be pretty basic, but he explains that compared to what he grew up eating, this stuff's packed with flavor. Yui's now curious about how he grew up, so he says he used to live with his teacher, who'd make whatever she could grow in her garden. Sometimes it was random wild mushrooms, other times she'd just roast up some beast meat with 0 seasoning and hand it to him. That's when he picked up cooking, but even then, he never made anything half as tasty as this. Yui doesn't care much about the food now, she's way more interested in the person who taught him magic. She wants to know more about that teacher, and the rest of the team starts jumping in too. Silica asks if she's a white mage, but Lloyd says not really, she's more into combat magic, and he'd see wild explosions every time she trained alone. Silica's shocked that someone who's not even a white mage could teach him so well, and he says Merlin's on a whole other level. Silica jokes that she wants to meet her and learn something, but Lloyd cuts in fast, telling her she'd regret that wish for the rest of her life if she knew the full story. After the chat about Merlin, they decide it's time for a strategy meeting. Yui tells Daggers to brief Lloyd because she's trash at giving serious explanations. Daggers says their mission's to wipe out monsters that have been messing up the nearby farms. Silica adds that multiple monster types have teamed up into one pack. That's new to Lloyd, and Daggers admits it's new for them too, but it's not something they can take lightly. Out of nowhere, Cross comments that since they're going up against a big crowd, he and Yui are gonna struggle since close-range fighters suck at crowd control. Yui agrees and says Silica's gotta carry this one because she's got wide area spells. But even Silica's stressed, saying those spells burn through mana way too fast. Yui turns to Lloyd asking if he's got any offensive magic in his arsenal, and he says he can cast basic stuff, but the outcome's usually kinda underwhelming. Daggers shifts gears to the plan itself, saying he and Yui will lure all the monsters into one place so Silica can hit them hard. Meanwhile, Cross will guard both Silica and Lloyd, who will focus on healing and support. Right after that, they all head back to the inn to rest. But Lloyd strays off in a different direction. Daggers stops him, wondering where the hell he's going, and Lloyd awkwardly admits he's dead broke and can't afford a room. Without missing a beat, Daggers tosses him a pouch stuffed with more gold than Lloyd's ever seen in his life. The poor guy panics, saying he can't take it. But Daggers tells him to chill because it's not a gift, he's just gonna deduct it from his paycheck. Lloyd can't argue with that and promises to bust his ass repaying every coin. Next morning, the whole crew gathers outside the inn, with Yui dragging herself in last. She looks around and asks where the hell everyone's luggage went. Turns out, Lloyd already stashed it all inside his magic storage, which blows her mind. She immediately hands him her stuff too, and he packs it in like it's nothing. Yui and Silica start hyping him up like he's some genius, but Lloyd says he could show them how it works. They all freeze, stunned that anyone could learn this skill, and he tells them it's not that hard, though boosting its storage size takes some effort. With that, they finally set off on their mission. While walking, Lloyd starts to understand how good it feels to have fun even during a quest. Since they didn't have to carry anything, they reach their first camp spot way ahead of time. Lloyd unloads their gear from storage and helps set up the tents. Yui's already eyeing the river, ready to go splash around, but Daggers shuts that down, saying they still need firewood and food. Lloyd steps up to grab the firewood, and Yui thanks him for cutting down their chores. Then she pulls Silica along so they can take a quick bath, and while they're off, Lloyd heads into the woods to collect dry branches. Lloyd spots a fruit he used to eat when he was a kid, so he grabs a handful to share with the crew. Right then, a loud scream tears through the trees. It's Yui. Without thinking, Lloyd bolts toward the sound and finds a huge serpent monster going after Yui and Silica, both caught off guard with no weapons in hand. Lloyd throws himself at the monster, forcing its attention off the girls. That gives them just enough time to run to the shore, grab some towels to cover up, and toss a couple of weapons their way. Once they're armed, Lloyd hits them both with enchantment spells on the spot. Yui charges in and slices the damn thing clean in half with one strike. But even after that, the monster's head still wriggles, trying to land a hit. Silica yells for cover and blasts it with a fireball, frying it on the spot. She stares at the aftermath in shock, wondering how the hell she pulled that off, not realizing Lloyd was the one who boosted her. Yui turns to thank him for saving their asses and asks if he can put her sword back in storage. But then, her towel slips and Lloyd ends up catching a full view of what she's been hiding. They both panic, she screams, and next thing he knows, she smacks the hell out of him. Once they're back at the campsite, things cool down, and Lloyd decides to teach them how to use storage magic. He explains they need to create a pocket space with their palms, but nobody's getting it. Silica tells them to just give it a shot anyway, and now they all look like idiots trying to crush an invisible balloon. Lloyd starts feeling like he's just a terrible teacher. Then Silica randomly mutters storage, and a magic space opens up in her hand. That's when they finally get it. None of them can use magic without chanting like Lloyd does, but if they use incantations, they might figure it out. After a bit more practice, Silica manages to stash her staff inside the space. The others still can't pull it off, but at least now they've got a clue. Later that night, when everyone's asleep, Lloyd and Yui are stuck on watch duty. She quietly sits next to him and thanks him for being part of the party. He tells her he should be the one grateful since he was totally jobless. Then he brings up how seriously she took this quest, all for the sake of their clients, and asks what's really driving her to go this far. Yui opens up about her past, saying that when she was a kid, her village got wiped out by monsters, and she was the only one who made it out alive. That's why, when she heard about this quest, she couldn't turn it down, didn't want anyone else going through what she did. But before she can say more, Lloyd cuts in, telling her to stay quiet. Something's nearby. Yui goes on high alert and summons her sword, while Lloyd tells her to wake the others. Soon the whole group's up, weapons ready. But once they see how many spider monsters are crawling in, they realize fighting isn't the move. They start backing away, trying to retreat slowly. But then, Yui accidentally steps on a twig, and that tiny crack sets the whole damn horde off. Everyone breaks into a run, but those spiders are fast, and before long, they're surrounded. Webs start flying out of their nasty bug asses, and the team manages to block the first barrage. But one spider manages to snatch Silica's staff. Then they start building a silk cage around the group, and panic sets in fast. Lloyd steps up, saying they need to stop the spiders in their tracks before they get overrun. He buffs everyone up and tells Yui to go in first. She launches herself up, slicing clean through the web, and Cross grabs Silica's staff, tossing it back to her. Yui charges at one of the spiders, blocks its sticky shot, and slashes off its legs in one clean motion. Then she literally rides the stream of silk flying out of it and surfs toward another, chopping that one down too. Lloyd tells Silica and Cross to jump in. Silica launches fireballs while Cross fires arrows straight through them, setting the bastards ablaze. Once the fight's over, Lloyd realizes he was shouting orders the whole time, even though he's the newest one in the crew. He apologizes, thinking he stepped out of line, but Dagas just grins and tells him that kind of instinct makes him a damn good leader. The rest of the team agrees and says they want him calling the shots from now on when things get messy. By morning, everyone's gotten the hang of storage magic enough to carry their own gear. And as they head out again, Lloyd keeps wondering why the hell spider monsters were crawling around in that area in the first place. Couple days later, Lloyd's pulling night watch again, sitting there in the dark thinking about those spider monsters. He starts wondering if maybe they should have taken a closer look at them when suddenly Yui and Silica call out to him, asking if he's seriously planning to pull another solo shift tonight. Lloyd agrees and the girls start getting concerned since he's been doing this non-stop. They tell him he should be rotating shifts like everyone else, but Lloyd says he's fine and wants the rest of the group to save their energy in case a fight breaks out. Yui's about to give him a proper scolding, but Silica gently stops her, saying if that's his decision, they should respect it, though she makes him promise to speak up if things ever get too hard. At the same time, Cross and Dagas are watching the whole thing unfold from their tent, quietly worrying about how damn stubborn Lloyd's being. Next day, they hit the road again. During a break, Lloyd starts scanning the area using search magic to check for monsters. He's relieved when he senses nothing, but then Yui runs up asking what he's doing. He tells her about the spell, it helps him detect nearby threats, and she's surprised saying she never heard of that kind of magic. Lloyd explains the range isn't huge, but it's better than nothing. Yui looks a bit upset realizing he's handling everything alone again, but Lloyd insists he's fine and doesn't need backup. Later that night, he's back on watch like always. Yui mutters that it kinda feels like Lloyd doesn't trust them, even though they're supposed to be friends now. Silica tells her that people have their own pace when it comes to trusting others, and maybe Lloyd's past messed him up a bit. She figures there's a reason he can't see how damn capable he is, and that's why he's trying so hard to make up for it. Yui gets curious about what Lloyd's been through, but Silica says he'll open up once he's ready. On the flip side, Dagas shows up and tells Lloyd to come help with something, while Cross offers to take his place on guard for the night. Lloyd follows Dagas, who sets up this clever trip-wire alarm system to alert them if anything gets close. Lloyd's impressed, and Dagas just tells him straight up the alarms got their backs now, so he better get some rest tonight. Lloyd shrugs, says there's no need for all that, claiming he can handle the job better than some alarm setup. That's when Dagas steps in, staring him down and asking if he even trusts the crew he's traveling with. Lloyd insists he does, but Dagas isn't buying it, says his actions tell a whole different story. Right then Lloyd starts remembering what Merlin and his old boss used to say, calling him useless and green. He admits that if he slacks off he might drag others down. Dagas just smirks, tells him to go ahead and be a burden if he needs to. That stuns Lloyd, not getting what he means at first, so Dagas breaks it down. They formed this party to back each other up, to cover what no one could handle alone. It's normal to cause some trouble now and then. He tells Lloyd to lean on them more, and for the first time Lloyd hears something like that. That little talk gets through to him, and later in the tent, Lloyd actually smiles realizing he's got folks he can count on now. Next morning he puts it into practice, nervously asks Yui to help fetch some water, and she lights up glad to do it. Meanwhile, a noble named Michelle gets word from some shady black mage who says the magic stones have been planted exactly where he asked. Michelle looks real satisfied, says the plan's gonna go smooth now. The mage adds that the earlier distractions scattered all the top adventure teams, so they won't be sticking their noses in. Only the heroes party is still around and they might mess things up. Michelle says there's no stopping that since the hero only moves when the king orders it. Still, he doubts the guy can stop what's coming next. Back in the woods, Lloyd and the team notice how weird it is that no monsters are anywhere nearby. Lloyd boosts his search spell, stretches the range, and picks up a cluster of beasts about 10 kilometers out. Cross mentions that's pretty close to those farmlands they're heading toward. Before Lloyd can explain more, Yui cuts in asking if he can really scan that far out. He nods and she flips out, shouting about how he said the range was way smaller the other day. Lloyd casually says 10 kilometers isn't that far, but she starts yelling again, but the rest of the group jumps in, telling her to chill out and focus on the real issue. They rush over to the monster's location, only to find the wolves already tearing through the farmland they were supposed to protect. The whole crew freezes at the sight of this massive swarm, but Lloyd looks even more unsettled. That was the only spot where he sensed monsters earlier, and now he's starting to wonder where the rest of them disappeared to. The others feel it too because the monsters don't usually abandon their territory like this. As they try to figure out what the hell's going on, Cross narrows his eyes and spots something weird buried in the middle of the wolf pack. No one else can make it out, so Lloyd casts a quick spell to give himself some telescopic sight. Now he sees it too, a strange black rock sitting dead center in the chaos. He gives the same vision boost to the others, and once they lock on they finally see it. Daggers says it looks like some kind of magic stone, and Silica points out the creepy dark aura coming off it. Lloyd nods, says that's probably mana leaking out, but then it hits him, because that energy feels a little too familiar, like the magic used by beast folk. Then he remembers something Merlin told him a while back, about how the beast tribes have a spell that lets them control monsters. So this damn rock might be doing the same thing. Without wasting time, Lloyd activates his search spell again, and his heart drops when he spots another huge wave of monsters heading straight for them. Now it all makes sense. That stone's the reason behind this madness. He still doesn't get who's behind it, but right now they've got bigger problems. Some of the group suggest falling back, but Yui's not having it, says they leave now. Those monsters will torch everything. Daggers agrees that running won't be easy even if they tried, but Silica though doubts they've got the power to pull off a win here. That's when Lloyd steps up and says they're gonna fight, and if they do it his way they've got a real shot. First thing's taking out that stone, so he asks Cross if he can hit it from here. Cross hesitates, says he might not break it from this distance. Lloyd tells him that's fine, just hit the damn thing. As Cross lines up his shot, Lloyd hits him with 3 different enchantments, and when the arrow flies, it strikes the stone dead on and shatters it to pieces. Cross stares in disbelief, asks how the hell that even worked. Lloyd shrugs and says he enchanted him, his bow and the arrow, says it like it's no big deal, just something any white mage would do. But everyone else is floored since normal healers can't pull off that kind of enchantment combo all at once. Right then, they notice the wolves turning on each other. With that cursed magic stone gone, their natural aggression kicks back in. That's exactly what Lloyd had planned, and he grins, saying the first part of the plan worked. Problem is, that giant horde still charging through the forest hasn't stopped. Moments later, the monsters burst out of the woods. Silica steps forward alone to face them. They keep closing in fast and furious, but Lloyd waits till the very last second before giving her the go. She snaps into action, unleashing a tornado of fire that roasts everything in its path. The crew stands frozen, stunned by the sheer power she just dropped. Lloyd quickly tells her to keep hammering them with wind and fire spells. Then he runs straight to Cross. That blast left the field covered in smoke, which blinds the flying monsters, but also hides them from the team. Lloyd links his mind with Cross using telepathy, then uses his search magic to lock onto each airborne target. Now that Cross can see them through Lloyd's senses, he picks them off one by one, not missing a single shot. In the middle of all this, Lloyd hurries back to Silica for the final part of the plan, but she's out of mana. He doesn't even hesitate, dumps a surge of his own into her like a damn human battery. The boost hits hard and drops him to his knees, but he tells her not to worry and just casts the next spell. She listens and calls down a heavy rain that douses the spreading wildfire before it gets out of hand. It drains her completely, and she drops to the ground, but Daggers catches her right in time. Yui rushes over, tells her she did amazing, and that now she and Daggers will handle what's left. While they head out to clear the stragglers, Lloyd and Silica stay behind. Finally catching a breath, Lloyd suddenly collapses, muttering that he still needs to get stronger if something this small wears him out. Not long after, Yui and the others return, having wiped out the rest of the monsters. But before they can relax, Lloyd tells them they've got no time to waste, his gut screaming that this was all a diversion, and the real threats headed straight for the city of Ishtar. Everyone's still trying to process what just happened when Lloyd casually pulls out a full crate of mana potions from his storage. He downs one in a single gulp, then tells them the whole mission was a damn setup meant to lure top adventurers out of Ishtar and weaken the city's defenses. Cross argues that Ishtar still has the Heroes Party and the Night Order, so taking it down won't be that easy. Daggers though says Lloyd's theory actually makes sense. But Yui doesn't want to wait around, says she's heading back just in case. And right as Lloyd finishes his potion, he casts a buff on the whole team, tells her they're moving now, then takes off running toward the city like the ground's on fire. Everyone stares, stunned by how fast he is, and when Yui tries to keep up, she realizes she's blazing too faster than Kevin Hart on a sugar rush. The rest of the squad follows, and they don't even blink when Lloyd mentions he boosted their speed so they could make it back faster. While Lloyd and the others are hurrying back to the city, the Count's lounging at his desk with a glass of what better be red wine. When General Giliste walks in, asks how the plan's going, and the Count says things are almost ready. Says that girl Giliste snatched has been surprisingly helpful. He's got a list of twisted ideas he wants to try on her, and once Ishtar falls, he'll have all the time in the world to get started. Giliste gets a chill, feels like the Count's cooking up something way darker than he's letting on. But he doesn't say a word. The guy used to be the Demon Lord's right hand, whatever's in his head, it's not something you question. Meanwhile, the girl's still locked in the Count's dungeon, barely hanging on. He brings her potions now and then, drains her magic, and uses it to craft those beast-attracting crystals he's been spreading. It's happened so many times, she's completely lost the will to fight. Back out in the field, Lloyd's group is flying. They just cleared a wide patch of grass, and they're making great time. But Silica starts getting worried, glances over at Lloyd, and says it must be hell keeping speed enhancement magic going for that long. Lloyd doesn't see why it's a big deal, because once you're used to it, the mana cost drops way down, it doesn't even scratch him anymore. The others ask what he means by getting used to it. So Lloyd tells them that back when he was younger, Merlin dumped him right in the middle of the forest and left him to figure out how to make it back home. As a white mage, he didn't stand a chance against the monsters out there. So all he could really do was boost himself with support spells and run for his life. Kept testing out different kinds of magic non-stop until he finally made it back. The rest of the group just stares at him stunned, but Lloyd says he figured that's how normal training goes, nothing worth making a fuss over. But Yui and Silica freeze for a second, looking at each other like they can't believe he just said that. Then they break it to him legal guardians aren't supposed to abandon their kids in the woods and hope for the best. They try to be as gentle as they can, but somehow Lloyd takes it the wrong way, thinking normal kids must go through even harsher stuff, and to him, that means he's just not good enough yet. Once the group finishes resting, Lloyd casts the enhancement spell again, and they get moving, racing toward the city. But not long after, he comes to a hard stop, and the sudden halt makes everyone trip over themselves. They all ask why he froze like that, and Lloyd says he picked up something strange on his scan, can't tell what it is yet. But it doesn't feel like a normal monster. It's more like a hunter stalking prey, says he's gonna check it out and tells the others to keep going. Yui shuts that down quick, tells him he has no clue what he's walking into, and if it turns out to be dangerous, he won't be able to handle it solo. Lloyd nods, says she's got a point, and the rest of the group agrees they're a team, and it's only right they face stuff like this together, which makes Lloyd genuinely thankful they've got his back. He leads them closer to the source of the presence, and once they're near enough, he confirms it, there are demons inside that house. Yui's eyes widen when she hears that, asks if he's absolutely sure, since demons are supposed to be restricted to the Magocracy. They've been after control of this continent for a long time, but right now, they're not supposed to be anywhere near the three major nations. The others look at Lloyd like he's completely lost, since everything they just talked about is common knowledge, but he's standing there like he's never heard a word of it before. He gets a little awkward, then admits he doesn't remember anything from when he was a kid. Says the first memory he's got is from the day Merlin took him in, and by then, the war had already ended. Now, if there really are demons hanging around this place, Daggers says they better go tell the city knights fast. Lloyd agrees, but before they rush off, he wants to look into things a bit more. The rest try to stop him, tell him it's way too risky to get any closer, and he gets that. But something about the mana he's sensing from that house feels off. It's almost the same as the mana from that magic crystal that drew in all those monsters earlier, so to him, it makes sense the demons inside are tied to the one behind the whole city attack. If that's what's going on, then Lloyd figures it's worth taking a chance, and Yui's got his back. She talks the others into going with it, says it's their job as adventurers to stop threats before they blow up into disasters, and these demons sure look like trouble. Besides, if they're lucky, maybe stopping them now will stop the attack on Ishtar before it happens, so they go for it. But when they reach the window and look inside, the place is straight up empty. Lloyd checks again to be sure, and this time he spots the demons underground, and they're clearly planning something bad. He turns to Silica, asks if she's got earth magic, since that's the only shot they've got. She nods, says she can handle it, so Lloyd buffs everyone with enhancement magic. Then she drops a sand pit spell under their feet, and just like that, they fall straight into the middle of a demon ritual. The demons all freeze, confused as hell, demanding to know who the intruders are, but Yui doesn't flinch, steps forward with her blade up in one of their faces, says if he doesn't start talking, she'll end him right here. Before he even opens his mouth, another demon jumps in and blasts a bunch of rocks her way using earth magic, forcing her to block just long enough for the first one to slip out. He bolts right past the one who saved him, then wastes no time and shoots one in the chest. And the coward who ran doesn't even look back, rushes through the door and locks it behind him so Yui can't follow. While she's trying to open it, the two remaining demons creep toward her from the side, but crossfires again, lands a shot in each of their thighs, and that gives Yui the perfect opening to take them both down without a fight. With the room finally clear, the whole crew regroups fast and heads after the last one before he gets too far. Behind the door, the demons already got the girl wrapped up in a cocoon with magic, clearly trying to haul her out of there. But then Yui and the others come crashing in, and he spins around, sees them, and runs again. They go after him, chasing up the stairs and into the open. But he's fast, and if they don't cut him off, he might escape. Lloyd calls out to Yui, tells her to circle ahead and block his path, while he sends Silica and Daggers around from both sides to trap him. Soon enough, the guy's stuck with nowhere left to run, and Lloyd steps forward, tells him it's over, says he's got a lot of questions and he's not letting him leave until he gets answers. But the demon's not backing down, fires off a desperate lightning spell, hoping to wipe them all out in one shot. But Lloyd's already on it, throws up a shield that covers the whole team, and the blast bounces right back, piercing straight through the demon's chest and dropping him on the spot. Once the fight's done, Lloyd walks over to the cocoon and starts unwrapping it carefully. But what he finds inside throws him off. It's a beast girl, unconscious and barely breathing. They carry her back to the cabin, lay her in bed and try to let her rest. But with all the demons gone, there's no one left to question. And the only person who might know anything is this girl, and she's in no shape to talk. Then Daggers turns to Lloyd and asks if there's any way to heal her. And Lloyd says he'll try, lifts his staff and starts channeling magic over her body, hoping it's not too late. Silica watches in disbelief at how smooth Lloyd's healing magic works, and when she asks about it, he shrugs and says he made a couple of tweaks in his spare time. Yui narrows her eyes and makes sure he hears her loud and clear. Most adventurers can't even touch their spells, let alone improve them. Says what he's doing isn't just rare, it's unheard of. Lloyd looks a little surprised by that, says he had no clue it was anything special since Merlin always made him help refine hers. But he gets the message and doesn't try to play it down this time. Not long after that, the girl finally starts to move, and once she opens her eyes, Yui jumps straight in with a wave of questions she's been dying to ask. The girl struggles to keep up, but she manages to tell them her name Claire, so at least they're getting somewhere. Then Lloyd steps in and takes over, asks if she knows why the demons locked her up. Claire stays quiet for a moment, so Lloyd shifts the tone and tells her they're just a group of adventurers who came to help a farm under attack. Says they found a magic crystal buried in the middle, summoning monsters non-stop. Then he mentions he could sense beast magic leaking from it, and that he's heard some beast folk can use spells to control monsters. That's why he asks if she's the one behind those stones. Claire freezes for a second, then nods and admits it's her magic, but says the demons forced her to do it. Now that they've got the truth, the whole group starts putting the pieces together. If the demons are using those stones to call monsters, and Claire's magic is powering them, then it's clear they want to launch a full-on attack on Ishtar, which happens to be the gateway to the continent. They agree to head back fast and take Claire with them before things spiral any further. Back in the city, a couple of guards stumble across one of the magic stones, but it's already too late to stop anything. The monsters have started pouring in, and it won't be long before the entire place gets swallowed up. Meanwhile, the crew stops for a quick rest, and that's when Lloyd picks up on something bad. He senses a wave of monsters heading for the city, and behind them, an even bigger force closing in. There's no way they can hold off all of them by themselves, so he makes a call. He tells Yui and the others to rush ahead and warn the knights while he stays behind with Claire, planning to use her magic to stop whatever's coming before it reaches the city. At the same time, back in the city, Alan is getting frustrated because he has been trying to find a replacement for Lloyd. But every white mage who applied can barely cast 2 spells at once, while Lloyd could toss out 5 with ease. Rena tells him Lloyd might have been a special case, but Alan refuses to accept that. His pride will not let him admit he was wrong, so he decides all the white mages in the city must be even more useless than Lloyd was, and they just need to keep recruiting until a useful one shows up. Right after that, a member of the Imperial Guard steps into the room carrying bad news. He informs the party that monsters have been spotted outside the city, and there are over 10,000 of them, and the report says the count is still growing, so the king wants the hero party to assist in defending the walls. Anyway, Alan still believes he and his team are the strongest around, so he agrees to the mission without giving it much thought, and seeing how laid back Alan is about the whole thing. The guard lets out a relieved breath because he thinks Alan knows what he is doing, but spoiler alert, he has no idea what the hell he is doing. Next, once the guard leaves, Sheena asks Alan if he is sure about this, since 10,000 monsters is a lot for them to handle on their own, but Alan is not worried about that. He is more interested in the glory he will claim once he fulfills a royal request, cementing himself as the strongest person in the entire kingdom. And from the way he talks, the others can already tell this is gonna end with their asses in the ground. At the same time, out in the forest, Lloyd and Claire have just located the second wave of monsters moving through the trees in a broad line between the trunks. And if these monsters join the mass already converging on Ishtar, there is no way the city survives. Then Lloyd tells Claire they have to do something to clear the monsters out. But she is uneasy and asks if there is a way to stop the horde without killing them. Because even if the demons were controlling her, it was still her power that pulled all these monsters here, so she feels partly responsible. Lloyd can tell Claire cares about the creatures, so he promises to find a plan that saves the town and keeps monster casualties to a minimum. And to do that he needs her help, asks her to use her magic to send the monsters back to their natural habitats as fast as she can. At the same time, Claire says it is possible, but she is not sure she can pull it off with that many gathered in one place. So Lloyd tells her the story might change if he layers support magic over her and boosts her abilities, and Claire is not sure it will work, but she is willing to give it a try, steadying her breath and nodding once. Then she starts to use her magic to speak to the monsters, now letting the rhythm build, yet before the spell can take hold, something in the forest cuts it off. A hard ripple that snaps the thread, so she will not be able to do anything until they figure out what is causing the interference. At the same time in the guild, Alan calls a meeting with every adventurer left in the city, and he is disappointed by how weak the room seems. Sheena explains that all A rank parties and above were sent out on missions, so the ones left are B rank and below, which is not ideal, but that does not mean he should insult them, since they are still willing to fight for the city. Meanwhile, Alan has been treating the B rank adventurers like disposable pawns, and they are starting to get angry. But before it boils over, the guild branch manager steps in and tells everyone to calm down. They are here to fight monsters, not each other, so they do not have time to waste arguing. Alan agrees to stop disrespecting the others, and since they need an attack plan, he stands and announces that every mage should fire their most powerful spells at the start, taking out 10 monsters each to punch a hole in the front. While the mages recover their mana, Alan and the rest of the Malif fighters will rush in to buy time. He intends to repeat the cycle as long as it takes until all the monsters go down, and in theory that is not a bad strategy. But the adventurers tell Alan they do not have the firepower to make that happen. At best, their strongest spells could drop 1 monster, so there is no way they will kill 10 each. Alan starts calling them incompetent, and then Maya speaks up and says she would not be able to do it either. Alan asks what she is talking about, so she explains that a while ago her spell potency suddenly dipped, and she has not used magic as efficiently since. It is not just her either. Sheena, Lulu, and Rena have all felt a clear drop in their power, and it all started the day after Lloyd left their party. With empty confidence, Alan accuses everyone of lying about their skills, so Rena tells him nobody lied to him at all, and says the same decline should be hitting him too, and if he had put even a little time into training instead of basking in hero glory, he would have noticed by now that he has slipped. She says straight out he does not deserve the title, and she says it in front of every low rank in the room. So Alan burns with embarrassment and tries to prove himself by throwing a full power punch at Rena, but she stops the strike with her palm without budging. The whole guild sees it too, so Alan's reputation is toast, especially after he spent the last half hour calling everyone weak and useless. Then he bolts out of the guild in shame, and the adventurers are left wondering how someone with his attitude ever ended up a hero in the first place. They clearly cannot rely on him to save them, so everyone starts debating the next move, because the monsters will begin their attack before long and nobody wants to be caught flat-footed. Some start talking about abandoning the city, but Rena tells them to calm down since she is still willing to stay and fight, and that steadies a few nerves. The adventurers feel steadier knowing someone as competent as Rena is on their side. Yet Rena admits the situation is really bad, and now she moves to step 1. Then she asks whether anyone has seen a man named Lloyd. While Rena looks for him, Lloyd is still in the forest with Claire, and they have just located a magic crystal hidden in the woods. This one matches the others Lloyd has seen so far, and the dark energy coming off it is probably the interference jamming Claire's spell. So unless they destroy it, she will not regain control over the monsters. However, that is easier said than done since there are bound to be at least a dozen of these scattered across the forest, and tracking them will be very difficult. Lloyd agrees that combing the whole forest would take forever, so he asks Claire to sense the crystals, since they are using her power and feeding on it. Claire then confirms that she can feel their energy when she is close enough, but the forest is too big for her to sense any location effectively. At the same time, Lloyd says it will not be a problem because he already has the perfect plan in mind. And before Claire even gets a word in, he casts sensory sharing on her, stacks an enhancement, and suddenly she can feel every magic crystal in the forest, with each exact location streaming straight into Lloyd's mind. Then he drops invisibility over both of them so they can move through the trees without drawing notice, and Claire is left speechless because he handled all of that without breaking a sweat. From there, they slip past the monsters clean, and Claire starts dispelling the dark magic and cracking the crystals one by one. Meanwhile, back in the city, the adventurers gather outside the walls and prep for battle, remaining deeply concerned. Earlier, Rena laid it out for everyone that the real engine behind the hero party's success was Lloyd, the reason they made it this far at all. But hearing that, the other adventurers want to know why he was pushed out of the hero party, and she admits it came down to short sight and pride. The title of heroes went to their heads, so after every strong showing, they assumed it was their own power and ignored how much work Lloyd put into supporting the team. She says their only hope now is to ask Lloyd for help, but the guild manager explains Lloyd is not in the city right now. To make it clear from the start, after getting kicked from the party, he went on to join an S-rank group and headed out with them on a monster subjugation run. Normally the trip would take days, but Rena figures Lloyd can cut that time with his support magic, so with some luck he might already be on the road back, which is why she tells everyone they are betting everything on Lloyd making it back in time to save them. They trust her judgment, but even with that hope, the feeling in the ranks stays grim as they look at the massive enemies waiting out there. Rena's plan has the archers loose the opening volley to thin the herd, then once the monsters drop into the trenches they dug, the shield bearers form a wall to hold them back while the mage squad unloads everything they have. If they can keep that rhythm, they should be able to hold the line until Lloyd and his party make it back. Later that night, Yui and the others close in on Ishtar, and thankfully Lloyd's speed boost still holds, so after a short breather they can keep running. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Lloyd and Claire have just found the final magic stone. Once they disable it, the monsters finally snap back to normal. Bad luck though. The local crowd happens to be high wolves and blood panthers, and those two breeds have old evolutionary beef, so the instant they settle, they turn on each other and start brawling. In the middle of the chaos, one beast slams into Claire, and the jolt knocks off the invisibility Lloyd cast on her, so every monster in sight whips toward her. Fear locks her up, and she forgets that her power literally lets her control monsters, so she is about to get torn apart. But Lloyd dives in and drags every eye off her to keep her safe. Back in the city, things are not much better. They've managed to hold the horde so far, but after grinding for hours people are running out of gas. The line starting to buckle and break as exhausted mages try to catch their breath and the shield wall strains under the weight. It's clear they can't last much longer, yet just as the last hope begins to fade, a massive fireball rips across the field, as Yui and the others have finally arrived. Meanwhile, on Lloyd's side, he keeps slipping past swipes and lunges, doing everything he can to avoid getting clipped. And under these conditions, that is about all he can do. Claire is amazed by how fast he moves, but she does not know why he is not striking back, since she is certain someone as strong as him could handle beasts like this. She remembers the promise Lloyd made to keep monster casualties to a minimum for her sake, and that explains why he refuses to cut them down. She doesn't want to let Lloyd suffer because of her. So she kicks in her powers and goes full Nicki Minaj, singing a tune that gets all the monsters to calm down and walk back into the forest. Lloyd wishes she had done it earlier, but he is still impressed, so he asks what she did. Claire says she simply used her power to ask the monsters to return to the forest, and they listened because the control is gone. Now that the mines in this area are free again, Lloyd says they need to move fast and hurry back to Ishtar. Meanwhile, over in Ishtar, the fight is still brutal, even with Yui's party helping. They have not put much of a dent in the horde, and weapons and mana are running dry, so it feels close to the end. But Rina urges everyone not to give up, says eventually they will find a way to win. But the front lines are already breached and people are getting hurt everywhere along the streets. They hang on until morning, but by then every layer of defense is wrecked. So the guild manager fears this is the end of the city of Ishtar. Right before the monsters can flood the gates, a clear voice rises from the cliff near the forest, and the singer is Claire, her song boosted by Lloyd's magic, with a little help from Nicki Minaj's curves. With that combo at work, the monsters quit attacking and march back into the trees in long lines, so the city isn't being overrun anymore. Once the field clears, Claire lets the song fade and nearly collapses from the strain, and Lloyd catches her and holds her steady. They are both relieved they kept the city from falling. But the crisis is not over, since the demons planned the whole thing and never bet on a single path, and now a horde of golems is marching toward the city. At the same time, Count Michel relaxes in his castle, certain the city of Ishtar has already been trampled by monsters. Yet a messenger rushes into his office with an urgent report in hand. At the outset, Michel assumes it's the notice that Ishtar has fallen. But to his dismay, the messenger says the monsters abruptly stopped the assault and scattered back into the forest, all except the golems, which for some reason couldn't hear Claire's song. Lloyd figures the demons are meddling behind the scenes, and at this pace the golems will cause heavy damage, so he casts a speed boost on Claire and tells her they need to sprint to town right away. As they thread past the golems, they get spotted, so Lloyd tells Claire to fall back to avoid the golem's punch before it lands. After a quick look at them, it's clear to him these ones have been enhanced somehow, so bringing them down won't be easy. Claire and Lloyd reach the trench around the city, so he takes her by the waist and vaults over it in one clean motion. The soldiers on watch freeze, since clearing that distance while carrying someone isn't normal. Even then, word has spread that Lloyd's enhancement magic is outrageous. After they land on the far side of the trench, he links up with Yui and the others, and they thank him for everything he did to save the city. Lloyd says the credit goes to Claire because her magic drove most of the monsters away, but the golems are still coming, so they need to prepare. Right then his knees give out and he drops to the ground because he's been using enhancement magic almost non-stop for days, and even for him that load is too much to carry. The others tell him to rest because he's overexerting himself, but he says he can't stop until the city is safe. Soon after, the guildmaster arrives, and with him there, Lloyd asks him to look after Claire in the meantime, since her safety is very important to him. The manager understands, so he assigns knights to guard her closely and swears to Lloyd that she'll be safe. With that settled, he's overjoyed that Lloyd made it back in time, because right now he's their only hope. Lloyd gets confused hearing that, since he thought the hero party was still in town. Right after that, Rina shows up and says Alan refused to join the fight. Lloyd can't believe it, because a hero who walks away when lives are on the line doesn't deserve the title. At that moment, he notices the wound on Rina's arm, which looks serious, so he doesn't hesitate to use his magic and heal her. The guildmaster is stunned that Lloyd heals Rina so easily, but he nearly collapses afterward because his mana is already running low. Rina tells him he didn't need to push himself that hard just to treat her, yet he says he couldn't leave her with an injury that severe. She has been wanting to apologize for not valuing everything he did for her, since he's the reason the hero's party grew strong to begin with. Lloyd stays modest and says he isn't that strong, while Rina insists his support was priceless for the team. Even then, no one gave him credit, and she did know better because she didn't stop Alan from kicking him out. So she wants to offer a formal apology. Right then, the guards ring the alarm bells because the golems arrive, and even if a few tumble into the trench, plenty remain standing, so the guards rush in to cut them down as fast as possible. Lloyd tries to warn them to wait because these golems aren't normal, but it's already too late. A guard's sword shatters the instant it meets the golem, and while he's stuck in disbelief, the golem drops him with a right hook. This is heading south fast, so Rena raises her shield and tells everyone to hit with full force. Yet magic and ranged shots almost bounce off the golem's rough hide, so they pull back and nerves start to fray. If they don't act soon, the city could still end up destroyed. So Lloyd tells Yui he's about to cast enhancement magic on everyone here. Yui asks if he's sure he can handle that, since casting enhancements on more than 100 people sounds insane, but he says he'll be fine. That said, in his current state, he can only apply the buffs one group at a time instead of all at once. Then Lloyd begins casting his spell, and when he finishes, his legs go weak since his mana is running dangerously low. He tells the others he just put a strength boost on all units at the front and a mana boost on every mage. He also used enhancement magic on the 4 of them as well. But they need to hurry, because in this state, he isn't sure how long the effects will last. Yui understands, and as the golems keep advancing, she climbs one of the towers and calls out to everyone on the field, telling them Lloyd has just cast enhancement magic on all of them, so they should be able to fight the golems now. The soldiers find it hard to believe he really boosted everyone that fast, so they hesitate. When one of them is about to be crushed by a golem, Rena rushes in and blocks the hit, after which Yui drops from the tower and slices the golem in half. With the first golem down, Rena raises her shield and tells everyone this proves Lloyd's enhancement magic works. Now that they've seen it, they realize they do feel much stronger than a moment ago. With Lloyd's help, they might be able to win after all. At the same time, Lloyd asks Cross to go assist the magic unit in the rear, while Dagas and Silica should head to the front lines as soon as possible. As for Lloyd, he's on the verge of collapse, so a guard runs up to help him stand and leads him to the fort so he can rest. Thanks to the boost from Lloyd's magic, adventurers start tearing through the golems one after another, and Lloyd cheers them on from one of the towers. But just as they are about to defeat the final golem, the enhancement magic suddenly wears off, so the adventurers are once again powerless against it. It may be a single golem, yet if none of their attacks can stop it and it reaches the city, it will wreak havoc. Yui runs out in front to block its path, and as it's about to strike, Rena shoves her aside so Dagas can block the punch. Even so, they won't be able to stall it for much longer like this, so Lloyd knows he needs to act, but his mana reserves are almost completely dry by now. But he still manages to scrape together enough energy to enhance Yui's sword. Yui picks up on what Lloyd did, then asks Dagas and Rena to cover her for a moment. The two of them raise their shields as Yui grips her sword, and the instant they block the golem's punch, she sprints up its arm and slices its head off. With that, the city of Ishtar is saved, and Lloyd lets out a breath because he can finally rest. Over in Michelle's castle, the general barges in because he just found out the beast girl they captured for their plan has escaped, and he wants an explanation. As soon as Michelle realized the attack had failed, he knew the general would be upset, so he packed his bags and slipped out. The general flies into a rage over this, and after he's done trashing Michelle's office, he decides he's going to kill the person who interfered with his plans. Back in the city, Lloyd wakes up in an inn, and shortly after, Yui comes to check on him. She's glad he's awake since he was so exhausted he slept for a whole day. The first thing Lloyd does is apologize because he blames himself for not being strong enough. But Yui is fed up with how much he undervalues himself, so she tells him to come with her because there's something he needs to see. She leads Lloyd to the front door, and when she opens it, he sees a huge crowd gathered outside waiting for him. He freaks out and closes the door because he's never had such a big crowd calling his name before. So Yui tells him they're just here because they want to thank their savior, and it's rude to slam the door in their faces, so he should go out and greet them properly. Yet by the time she opens the door again, Lloyd has already jumped out a window, and he's circling the block to avoid the crowd. Meanwhile, at Merlin's house, Willie stops by to visit. Just as he's about to open the door, a huge explosion goes off. Merlin comes out, and Willie tells her an explosion isn't a way to welcome a guest. But in her defense, she thought he was an intruder. Willie doesn't mind since he didn't get hit, and Merlin is still impressed by how he always manages to walk away unharmed from her spells. When he steps inside, Willie spots Thor and Lily, two of his and Merlin's old teammates from their hero days. and it's been ages since they were all together like this. Merlin asks if he has any new word on how Lloyd is doing. So he tells her that Lloyd was kicked out of the hero party a while back. Merlin is shocked to hear it, and she can't understand why the party wouldn't want Lloyd on the team. But Willie says there's no need to worry since Lloyd is now with an S-rank team, so he's doing alright. Merlin is relieved to hear that, yet there's something else Willie wants to tell her, because even if he has never spoken to Lloyd, he has watched him long enough to feel that Merlin must have used some pretty rough parenting methods. Back in the city, Lloyd is watching from the top of a building as crowds of people flood the streets looking for him, and he hasn't figured out what's going on. Right then, his friends find him up here, and he asks them why so many people are after him. So they tell him the people want to show their gratitude for what he did to save the town. However, Lloyd doesn't think he deserves any gratitude, because to him what he did was the least anyone should do. But Yui tells him he's looking down on himself again. He keeps setting unrealistic expectations and beating himself up for no reason. So they all tell him he could use a little more confidence in himself. For the first time, Lloyd seems to understand what they mean. Over at Merlin's house, Willie tells her that Lloyd is far too humble for his own good, and he has no real sense of how strong he is. So it's a miracle that he found a team who wouldn't take advantage of him. Merlin realizes she might have messed up with how she trained Lloyd, but she didn't want him to repeat the same mistakes she made. At the same time in the city, Lloyd finally agrees to face the crowd, and everyone begins thanking him for powering them up during the battle. As far as they're concerned, Lloyd is the new hero of Ishtar. And as for Alan, he and the others are in serious trouble now. No one's sure what he was thinking, but refusing to help without a reason in the middle of a crisis strips him of the hero title on the spot. So his high status is gone, and his pride won't let him stay in a town where Lloyd is the hero. So he tells everyone to pack their bags so they can leave as soon as possible, and the girls all reluctantly follow him. The next day, Lloyd and the rest are summoned to the Lord's castle, and when they arrive, they're surprised to find Claire waiting there as well in person. Yui asks if the Lord called her too, and a few moments later, the Lord appears and explains that Claire is actually here as an honored guest. They take their seats, and Lord Abel informs them that Claire is in fact the third princess of the Forez Empire, which makes her very important to everyone involved. Lloyd and the others had no idea Claire was royalty, so it comes as a major shock to all of them. With that set aside, Abel asks what they think of Claire's power after seeing it up close and personal. Lloyd says it's incredible, but also frightening, because in the wrong hands, it could cause massive chaos, which is exactly why Abel says they can't let the demons take her again under any circumstances. The Empire will want its princess back soon, so Abel has a special job for Yui's party. He wants them to escort Claire to the royal capital Sylphus, and under normal circumstances the royal knights would handle that duty. But that would draw too much attention, and Abel doesn't want to risk tipping off the demons to Claire's presence. It's clear the demons crave Claire's power, and Lloyd is certain they won't give up easily or back down at all. So he and the rest of the team agree to escort her to the capital, and the following morning they set out on their journey. While they're on the move, Lloyd checks the map and guesses they'll reach the next town before long. So Cross grumbles about how far the capital still is, saying it's already been 10 days since they left Ishtar. Doggies explains they picked a longer road on purpose just to keep things safer. That's when Claire suddenly lights up and tells Yui the town they're headed to has hot springs, which totally puzzles the sheltered princess. Claire says she's heard about them before, but never actually got to enjoy one. That surprises Yui, who tells her she hasn't really lived until she's tried it. Cross starts feeling uneasy seeing how chill Yui's acting during a mission this classified. But Dagaz figures it's her way of caring for Claire in her own way. Lloyd doesn't really follow, but Cross catches on fast it's because Claire would only feel okay if they stayed serious the whole time they're guarding her. After that, Silica points out it might be good for the princess to unwind a bit, since she rarely ever gets to leave home or see new places. And that makes them all appreciate how far their leader's simple mindset can go sometimes. When they finally get to town, they waste no time and head straight to the hot spring like Yui suggested. Yui and Silica jump right in and don't even think twice about how weird it is that no one else is there. Claire, meanwhile, is still nervous about taking off her towel since she's not used to bathing with others, and the whole thing feels a bit awkward. Silica and Yui get it, but they tell her there's nothing to worry about. They're all girls anyway. Claire ends up giving in, but only if they promise not to stare too much. After a short while, Yui's staring straight at Claire, and just as Claire's about to call her out for acting weird, Yui blurts out a compliment on how elegant and slim she looks, says it suits a princess perfectly, but Claire still feels a little self-conscious since she doesn't have curves like Silica. Yui's chest is pretty full too, but Silica jokes that it's just because Yui's been stuffing her face with sweets lately. Yui jumps up ready to argue, then remembers how much meat and dessert she's had these days, so she can't really deny it. Still, she doesn't love being teased about it, and while those two go back and forth about boobs, Dagas, Cross, and Lloyd are on the other side of the wall scrubbing each other's backs, and they can hear every single word. Dagas and Cross are both trying hard to keep their minds off the nonsense, but Lloyd's already focused somewhere else. Since the demons are after Claire, he figures they'll make another attempt to snatch her. A massive invasion inside the kingdom is unlikely, but sending in a smaller elite squad sounds a lot more realistic, so Lloyd needs to think of countermeasures. The plan was for everyone to stay here one night and leave the next morning, but Lloyd calls a meeting and tells the party he wants to remain in this town a few days longer because he has preparations to make. Dagas speaks up saying he also wants extra time since he's planning to upgrade his gear, and Silica adds she could use the break to practice her spells a bit, so she's fine with it too. Cross shrugs, doesn't really care either way, and says it's up to Yui, but with most of the group in favor of sticking around. Yui agrees to delay the departure a few days so everyone can get what they need done. When morning comes, Dagas heads out to check the weapon shops across town, but after searching most of the morning, he still hasn't found what he's after. While he's walking through the streets, he spots Yui and Claire near a boat, looking like they're about to go sightseeing. Yui calls out and asks what he's up to, so Dagas explains he's been hunting for a new shield since his current one is worn out, but he hasn't had any luck finding a replacement. He says he's already gone through every weapon shop in the city. Claire remembers passing by a shop tucked away in one of the alleys, but the place looked kind of shabby, so she's not sure he'll find what he's looking for there. Dagas then decides to give it a shot and makes his way to the spot. Once he steps inside, the place looks deserted at first. He starts wondering if it's abandoned. But then he notices rows of top-quality weapons hanging neatly on the walls, so he's certain he's in the right place. That's when the shopkeeper comes out, and the first thing he does is shout at Dagas, accusing him of being one of the punks who stir up trouble there. Dagas is caught off guard, has no idea what he's talking about, and quickly explains he only came to look around. The old man realizes the mistake, apologizes for snapping, and lets him go on browsing the shelves in peace. While Dagas is checking out the shields on display, a group of rough-looking guys strolls in, and their leader Karen shouts for the old man to come out. Right then, Karen spots Dagas browsing and looks surprised this dump actually has a customer. So he hollers across the shop asking if he's really here to buy something. Dagas doesn't get what these guys are up to, but he answers plain and simple that he's here to pick up a weapon. The second the words leave his mouth, the whole gang cracks up laughing. They assume he must be some nobody adventurer if he's wasting time in a rundown shop like this. But just then the owner appears and he's clearly pissed. Karen flashes a smug grin and asks how business has been lately, though he already knows because he's been messing with the shop every chance he gets. From the way he's talking, Dagas realizes Karen and his crew have been harassing the old man, so he steps forward. Karen's goons warn him to keep out of it, bragging that their boss is in a rank and no one in this town could take him. That might have been true if there wasn't an S-rank shield user standing right in front of them, though Karen has no clue who he's dealing with, and he keeps patting himself on the back for being a rank. Dagas asks why an adventurer with his rank would waste time bullying an old man, so Karen explains he's been trying to buy an artifact from the shop. Every time he shows up, the old man refuses to sell it, saying Karen's not worthy. The owner doesn't want to hand it to someone who'd never unlock its real power, but Karen doesn't care, says he'll just beat the old man until he hands it over. The moment that comes out of his mouth, Dagas steps between them and calls him a disgrace to adventurers for even thinking about that. Suddenly one of Karen's lackeys loses it and swings at Dagas, but the punch is weak, so Dagas grabs his arm and twists it behind his back. He then pulls his shield from storage and slams the whole group straight out of the shop. Karen's left stunned, thinking Dagas was just some low-tier rookie, but Dagas calmly shows his adventurer ID and states he's S-rank. He says he didn't mention it before because bragging about rank is pathetic, and he won't stoop that low. That shit leaves them speechless, and as Dagas shuts the door, they bark threats that he'll regret it. Meanwhile, after all that chaos, the old man makes up his mind and with Dagaz's attention, he says there's a favor he wants to ask of him. At the same time back at the inn, Lloyd is sitting at a table working on his magic when Yui and Claire return from their little sightseeing trip. Yui asks what he's up to, and he explains he's been trying to refine his support spells, though he's also thinking about picking up some new magic. He just hasn't decided what would be worth the effort. Yui suggests maybe he should learn some offensive magic. Lloyd says he could, but he doubts it would matter since Silica's attack spells are way stronger than anything he could pull off. And for once, Yui gets where he's coming from, because finding a mage on Silica's level is nearly impossible. At the same time, Silica is out in the forest pushing herself with training, because in the last fight, if Lloyd and Claire hadn't arrived when they did, she's certain they all would have died. She knows she can't keep depending on Lloyd to save the day, so she's determined to grow stronger, and that means leveling up her spells. She spends hours trying to control a high-tier fire spell, but each attempt keeps blowing up on her. Still, she refuses to quit since this is all part of the process. Back at the inn, while Lloyd and the others drink tea, Yui says it's fair to call Silica a prodigy when it comes to magic. But what really makes her special isn't raw talent. It's her refusal to stop until she masters a spell, no matter how hard it is or how long it takes. That persistence is showing right now as Silica keeps drilling her new spell. And at last, she begins to see progress. The blast doesn't blow up in her face this time. She's thrilled that she finally managed to keep control. But that excitement cost her, because she slips off the rock she's standing on, loses her footing, and the control over her spell collapses with it. So a massive explosion shakes the forest. Luckily, Silica survives mostly unharmed, and thanks her luck, she didn't end up setting the whole forest on fire. But she's frustrated at herself for such a dumb slip-up. Out in public, she's always aware of her surroundings, but when she's alone she tends to relax too much. Her clothes are ruined, so she figures it's better to wrap things up and head back for the day. Just as she's about to leave, she hears movement in the bushes, and her first thought is that it could be a monster. If that's the case, she's screwed since her mana's basically spent. Thankfully, it's only Dagaz stepping out from the brush. They both freeze for a moment when they run into each other, and Silica asks Dagaz what he's doing out here. He says it's kind of a long story, then explains that when the old shopkeeper mentioned a favor, he brought out a masterwork shield forged by the renowned smith Rians. The piece is called Aegis, and Karen has been trying to get his hands on it because it can block any attack and is practically unbreakable. Dagaz can tell at a glance the shield is something special, and the old man says it's so heavy most adventurers wouldn't be able to handle it right. So he refused to sell it to Karen rather than watch a work of art go to waste in the hands of someone unfit. Plus, Karen was a hassle, so even if he were strong enough to use it, the answer would still be no. With Dagaz it's different, and the old man says he's willing to give the shield to him. Dagaz is taken aback and says it's a lot to give away, and the man says it's fine, but he does have one condition. Since early this morning, people have been hearing strange explosions from the forest, and they're too scared to check it out. So he wants Dagaz to investigate in exchange for the shield. Silica knew the blasts were loud, but she had no idea her training was scaring the townspeople that much, and Dagaz points to the giant crater in the ground and says it's hard not to be afraid when spells with that kind of force are flying around. After that, Dagaz takes Silica to the old man, and she apologizes over and over for the trouble she caused. The man says it's alright since Silica fixed the crater she made, so there was no harm done. He tells Dagaz he can take his shield now, but Dagaz says he doesn't feel like he earned it since his friend was the one behind the disturbance in the first place. Even so, the man wants him to have it anyway because he respects Dagaz as an adventurer. Back home, Silica and Dagaz tell the others everything that happened today, and Dagaz shows them the shield he was given. They're all impressed he managed to acquire a legendary shield and amazed that Silica already has a new spell under control. Yui then asks her to demonstrate it later. Seeing Dagaz and Silica raise their capabilities so much in one day makes Lloyd want to push even harder to keep up, and Cross feels a bit left out since he didn't do much today. Yui says there's no point in rushing, since she's sure they'll all keep getting stronger, and in the meantime she says it's time to get some food, so she drags Claire and the rest so they can go to a restaurant together. The following morning, Cross takes a stroll through town, deep in thought about how he can push himself to get stronger. He can't afford to fall behind the others, but grabbing a new weapon or training in the woods won't change much for him, so he doesn't know what move to make. Right then, a young kid bumps into Cross and quickly apologizes, but Cross tells him not to sweat it since it's no big deal. He notices the boy is wearing an adventurer tag around his neck, so he asks if he's registered with the guild. The boy nods, and once he hears Cross is an adventurer too, he admits he has a request and wants Cross to join his party. Normally, Cross would have turned him down, but the kid looks so desperate he can't bring himself to refuse. Besides, he's got some free time, so why not? The boy introduces himself as Lin, then brings Cross over to the Adventurers Guild so they can get started. Cross sees that Lin's carrying a bow and arrows, so clearly he's an archer too. That makes him wonder why Lin has been wandering around without a party when archers really aren't built for solo work. However, it doesn't take long before everyone in the guild notices Lin and starts whispering about how sorry they feel for Cross, saying the kid will only drag him down. Turns out Lin is a total disaster with a bow, so nobody wants to partner with him. Lin apologizes for not saying anything sooner and admits he's actually E rank, adding that he'd understand if Cross bailed on a loser like him. Cross tells him he's not going anywhere, and to ease his guilt, he adds that he's also looking for a way to grow stronger. Lin takes that the wrong way, thinking Cross must be as low-ranked as him, and suddenly he's all cheered up, calling them low-ranked brothers. Cross figures it's not worth correcting him, so he suggests they check the notice board for a quest to start with. While Cross deals with Lin, Yui is wandering town looking for a dessert shop she heard about earlier. Still, she's starting to worry about putting on weight with all the sweets she's been eating. Right then, she hears a commotion to her right, so she turns and sees a pompous noblewoman screaming at a kid for getting mud on her dress. The kid's shaking and mutters an apology for the mess, yet the dress stopped mattering a while ago. That noblewoman only wanted a pretext to turn him into prey, so she snaps at her guards to end him, and that grin on her man's face says everything, because he's been itching for a reason to kill for ages. The townsfolk know it's wrong and want to step in, but she's from the hated House Wendy, so anyone who moves now just signs up to be her next victim. The soldier lifts his blade, ready to carve the kid up, when Yui shouts for him to stop. The woman flies into a rage and declares that no one interferes with the orders of someone as powerful as her. Yui has no idea who this woman is, and she couldn't give a damn either. All she sees is a ratchety, big-back old hag who gets off on bullying the weak, and she isn't having it. The woman gets flustered and orders her men to cut Yui down first, so the whole squad charges without blinking. Yui tells the boy to bolt while he can, and as the guards swing, she whips a sword out of storage and sets her stance. The men are thrown off since a second ago she had no weapon, and normally seeing a move of that sort would be enough for me to rethink whether I really want to be fighting this person. Even so, the woman barks at them to keep going, so they obey. At the same time, Cross and Lin are out on their first assignment, aiming to wipe out a batch of red slimes. Cross figures a mission of this sort should be easy to clear, even with Lin's abysmal aim, so he pulls his bow from storage and lines up a shot. However, he slips and forgets he's posing as low rank, so when Lin notices the storage trick, Cross smooths it over and says it's just a basic spell a friend taught him. Anyway, time to handle the slimes, so Cross sights in and sends a few arrows clean through the cores of 3. Lin says Cross is amazing, but Cross tells him he can't just sit and watch, so he should try putting a few shots in too. Lin nods and gives it his best, loosing a handful of arrows at the slimes, but he's aiming worse than my ranked teammates, so getting him up to speed is going to take forever. Back in town, Yui is still trading blows with the guards, and the noblewoman can't process why her men keep failing against a single girl. The crowd eventually puts a name to the face, recognizing Yui as the sword prodigy who hit S rank at 16, so the onlookers finally get why the guards can't put her down. And to be real, she's probably holding back so she doesn't end up killing anyone by accident. Yui tells the noblewoman it's time to quit, but the woman still has one trick ready, so she gives a tiny signal to the mage hidden in the crowd. At that moment, a magic circle flares under Yui's feet, and in the next beat chains of sorcery snap tight around her. Those bindings start draining her mana bit by bit until movement slips away, so fighting back isn't on the table now. The noblewoman orders her men to finish Yui for good, yet the ruckus draws a traveler passing by, and the newcomer drops down to see what's happening. It isn't her place to preach peace, but 4-on-1 is a joke, so she decides to level the field. It looks like she only takes a single step. Then, in the very next instant, every one of the noblewoman's guards collapses unconscious as if someone unplugged them. Yui is the only set of eyes that tracks it, since in that split second the woman blazed behind each guard and returned to where she started. She was so fast she could have taken a nap and been back before anyone blinked. And while Yui generally avoids taking lives, this woman has no issue bringing back a head or two as a souvenir if pushed, so when she leans in and lays down a threat, the noblewoman drops in a dead faint. With the skirmish done, Yui thanks the stranger for the save, then adds a favor she's been holding on to. The woman's speed is insane, so Yui says she wants to learn how to reach that level. The woman answers that Yui is already frighteningly strong for her age, so there's no need to rush growth. But Yui explains she has her reasons. There's a white mage in her party named Lloyd, and he's the real deal, so she needs to get stronger to make sure she isn't dead weight on him. The woman stiffens at Lloyd's name. Then it clicks that Yui must be the leader of the party Merlin talked about. The traveler turns out to be one of Merlin's former teammates, and now Yui has her full attention, so she agrees to train her for a bit. At the same time back at the inn, Lloyd has been grinding through spell tweaks without stopping, turning ideas over in his head until it hurts, and the others start getting worried about how hard he is pushing himself. They tell him he should step away for a bit since shutting himself in this way is not good for him, and Claire offers to take a quiet walk around town with him. Out in the woods, Yui is with the woman, and the woman finds it a little unsettling that Yui followed a stranger into the trees without hesitation. Yui says it is fine since she can tell the woman is not a bad person. Yet she still wants to know her name. The woman hesitates because she does not want to reveal her true identity, so she gives a fake name and says she is called Lilith. That long pause a moment ago makes Lilith seem even more suspicious than before. Yet Yui remains fairly sure she is good at heart, so she is going to try to learn as much as she can from her. Speaking of learning, Cross is trying to teach Lin how to use his bow the right way. After a few pointers, Lin actually manages to graze one of the slimes, which counts as real progress, so Cross asks him to try aiming for the core next time. Lin says he understands, pulls the string back again, and this time he manages to destroy the slime's core. Cross is amazed because he honestly thought Lin was hopeless at first, yet he turns out to be a surprisingly quick learner. For Yui's training, Lilith says the first lesson is to cut down that tree over there. It sounds simple enough. Then Lilith adds that Yui has to do it from this spot without moving her feet. Yui thinks Lilith must be joking since something of that sort should not be possible. But Lilith goes ahead and demonstrates the technique and fells the tree with a single slash. She explains you just need to coat your sword in mana and swing as hard as you can, and it will work out, so Yui is eager to give it a try. Meanwhile, Lloyd and Claire are out sharing a snack while they soak their feet in the hot spring. Lloyd is glad he got a chance to step away from all that magic research for a while. And since the topic is on his mind, there is something he has been meaning to ask Claire. He has had his suspicions for a while, but first he wants to confirm whether the power she used to control the monsters was ancient magic or not. Claire freezes up a bit since she was not expecting Lloyd to figure that out. But she does admit that it is indeed ancient magic. That lines up with what Lloyd expected, since magic that impressive could not have been developed in the modern era, and that leads him to his second question, so he asks if it would be possible for him to learn how to use that magic as well, since it might help with his research, but Claire tells him he cannot. An ancient magic user is said to only appear once every few centuries when a gifted child is born, and anyone who tries to wield it without the natural talent suffers brutal backlash. There are even stories of a man who used ancient magic to protect an entire village and ended up losing his life because of it. So Claire warns Lloyd he has no business messing around with something that dangerous. Back with Cross and Lin, they finally manage to wipe out every slime, which means their mission here is complete. It would have been wrapped up faster if Cross could reload instantly, but that's just one of the built-in drawbacks of being an archer. Even so, he tells Lin they should head down and gather the slime material. But right then Lin spots a giant spider. That thing is a high-level monster, so Lin says they should bail, but if they run now, the spider will eat all the material they worked so hard to gather. Cross refuses to let his effort go to waste, so he fires an arrow straight at the spider's head. Yet a single shot is nowhere near enough to hurt it. At that moment Lin thinks of a plan and tells Cross to try rapid firing. Cross insists that isn't possible, but Lin snaps at him to shut up and start using his storage spell more aggressively. Cross had never thought of that before, but he decides to test it out, and after firing one arrow, he instantly pulls another from his storage spell to replace it. cutting out his reload time completely and letting him blast through the spider's shell. As for Yui's lesson, she spends the entire day working on the mana slash. But no matter how many times she swings, it just doesn't click. Lilith can tell she's trying her hardest, but she might need something to push her. So Lilith purposely allows herself to be attacked by a roaming panther, forcing Yui to jump in to defend her. In that desperate moment, she finally pulls off the technique, and she's overjoyed. But she's also drained from all the practice, so she collapses right afterward and Lilith rushes to catch her before she hits the ground. That night, Lloyd and the others sit around the table, worried sick since Yui still hasn't returned. Just then, Lloyd hears a noise at the front door, and when he goes to check, he finds Yui lying passed out on the doorstep, while a little farther down the street Lilith is seen walking away into the night. By the following morning, the group is ready to get back on the road, but Lloyd is clearly frustrated. He feels down because everyone else managed to learn flashy new skills, while all he did was polish his spellwork, come up with a couple new wide-range attacks, and create an original search spell. In his mind, none of that measures up to what the others accomplished, and the group is honestly getting tired of how little he appreciates his own worth. Over in the demon world, after his attempt to seize that town collapsed, the demon general is forced to face the demon lord and admit just how badly he failed. The demon lord is furious with him because the monster army was supposed to be the foundation of their assault on the human world. He regrets placing so much faith in him. Yet at this stage, it is too late to prepare another strategy. So the demon lord commands him to track down Claire and continue the invasion plan, or else he will be stripped of his rank. The general can only obey, but he wonders how he is supposed to find Claire when he has no idea where she is. Right then, the Count appears before him, and the general is pissed because the Count abandoned him the second the plan collapsed. Before he can strangle him on the spot, the Count tells him to wait since he has useful information. He explains that Claire is currently traveling toward the royal capital and is being escorted by an S-rank adventurer party. He even offers to help capture her as a way to make up for abandoning him, and since the general has no better options, he reluctantly accepts. At the same time, Lloyd and the rest are still on the road, but their nerves are stretched thin because everyone jumps into attack mode the moment a rabbit hops out of a bush. Lloyd quickly scans the area and tells them to relax, since there are no demons anywhere nearby. They all breathe easier, but that little scare leaves them uneasy, so they agree to take a short break to calm themselves down. While they rest under the trees, Yui notices that Lloyd is smiling more than usual and asks what he is so happy about. He says it just makes him glad to see how much everyone has grown. Yui already knows where this is heading, so she asks him about his own progress. And unsurprisingly, Lloyd says he has been trying his best but needs to work harder so he does not drag the team down. This is already the 7th time they have had to bring this up with him, yet he still does not seem to get it. So Yui reminds him of the celebration that was held in his honor back in town. Lloyd admits he understands he is not useless anymore, but he insists he could still do more to keep pace with the group. The others cut in and tell him that the only reason they have been pushing themselves so hard lately is because they are trying to keep up with him. Lloyd tries to tell them his skills are nothing special next to his master, and while the others do not exactly know who that master is, Claire for her part says plainly that from what she has seen, Lloyd is the strongest person on this team. Yui adds that he needs to start recognizing what he can actually do, because if he keeps selling himself short, then he will never draw out his full power in a fight, so he should meet his own standards head-on. Lloyd was barely tracking the lecture a moment ago. Still, he understands what his friends are trying to say, and from there he promises to be more confident in himself moving forward. At the same time, the one who saddled Lloyd with those confidence issues in the first place is already in the royal capital searching for an old friend. Her trail leads straight to the royal castle, so she heads for the gate, but the guards stop her since only authorized visitors may enter. So Merlin quietly casts and pulls off the almighty shut up and sleep move, dropping the guards in an instant. Then she walks into the castle, and before long she reaches a library that looks intriguing. Even so, all of it is nothing but an elaborate illusion, so she strolls to a rear wall and with a light wave of one finger, dispels the masking magic on it, revealing a hidden door. She is about to knock, and right then Lowen opens up to welcome her. Lowen can tell the unexpected caller is Merlin because her mana carries a pleasant scent, and since it is good to see her again, they sit down together for tea. First things first, Lowen lets Merlin know that the previous Demon Lord's son now runs the demon megocracy. Yet they have kept a low profile these past few years, so things here have stayed relatively peaceful. Merlin remarks that the Emperor must think very highly of Lowen to let her use the castle library as a research lab. And Lowen says it simply ended up that way when she tried mimicking some of Merlin's magic. Merlin claims she has no spells worth copying, but Lowen calls that nonsense and reminds her that she is the one who originally devised the technique for using storage magic, and she can cast countless spells without an incantation, all achieved by applying her own analysis of ancient magic. Merlin answers that those were necessary breakthroughs to bring down the Demon Lord, and since they are on that topic, she wants Lowen to examine this book she brought. It is only half of the original grimoire, yet Merlin wants Lowen to confirm whether it still holds the power to seal the Demon Lord away. Lowen asks whether Merlin believes the Demon Lord intends to move again, and Merlin says it is merely a possibility for now, so she wants to be ready in case the worst comes to pass. Back with Lloyd and the others, they are making great time, so they should reach the town of Schwartz within the next few hours, and from there it will only take a single day to arrive at the capital. At that point, Claire grows uneasy since dusk is closing in, and if they fail to clear the forest before nightfall, monsters could ambush them. Cross says that should not be a real problem because Claire can control monsters, yet she reminds him the spell still takes time to set up, so if they get caught off guard, she will not have enough of a window to activate it and lock things down. To be safe, Lloyd decides to run a quick scan of the surroundings so he can confirm there are no threats nearby. But then he realizes something is interfering with his magic. Right after that, a thick fog spreads around the party and presses in on every side. And they all know this is bad news, so Silica says she will blow the fog away with wind magic. However, when she reaches for her staff in storage, she finds the fog is jamming that access too. There is no way any of this is a coincidence, so they conclude it has to be the work of demons. Since they cannot fight properly in these conditions, their best chance is to sprint straight to Schwartz and take shelter there until things settle. Back in the royal capital, Lowen has just finished analyzing the grimoire, and she tells Merlin there is still mana left inside, but it is only the remnants of Sybil's magic. Merlin is relieved because that means they still have a chance, and that is good enough for her. So from there she tells Lowen about Lloyd and the fact that he has the potential to become a chosen one, just as she and Sybil were in the past. The reason she is so sure comes from the incident in his childhood when he picked up the grimoire and the book reacted the very instant he touched it, which means he must be compatible with the magic sealed inside. Once Merlin learned that Lloyd was a chosen one, she decided to raise him so he would grow stronger than she or Sybil ever were. And to reach that goal, she constantly gave him tasks that were beyond his ability. It was an effective way to force growth. Still, Merlin now realizes that non-stop training and belittlement is not a good way to raise a child. Eventually, Lloyd ran away from home, and now he is traveling with an S-rank party, escorting the Beast Princess to the capital. It has been ages since Merlin last saw him, and she truly misses him, which is part of why she came to the capital in the first place, so she can sit down and talk to him once he arrives. On Lloyd's side, he and the others reach Schwartz at last, yet the streets feel oddly empty and still. Since the fog here is thinner, Lloyd boosts Silica's mana just enough for her to pull her staff from storage, and right after that she sweeps her wind magic across the square to blow the rest of the haze away. As the air clears, the group spots a cluster of demons standing right in the middle of town, staring the party down in the open. Claire immediately recognizes Giliste as the one who abducted her before, and it is obvious he has come to snatch her again, so Lloyd tells everyone to gear up for a fight. He puts dagas on guard duty to keep Claire safe, while Cross climbs the tower to provide overwatch. And from there the others will handle Giliste's troops head-on without delay. Yui opens by carving through a pack of demons with a mana slash, and Silica would love to drop a flame burst to erase the rest, but the blast would roast allies too, so she sticks to standard fire shots. Fortunately, Cross makes up for the missing firepower by dropping a couple more demons with clean arrows, yet when he lines up on Giliste his shots bounce off. Yui steps in again and tries to cut Giliste down with another mana slash, but he barely reacts and drives straight for Claire. Dagas meets him and turns aside the strike, and Yui tries to cash in on that opening by slipping behind him, only for her blade to fail to connect for a reason she cannot see. At that point, Lloyd realizes Giliste is wrapping himself in mana as armor, and Giliste is impressed he caught on so fast. so he assumes Lloyd was the one who interfered with the attack on Ishtar. He rockets into the sky and winds up to strike at Lloyd. And since the range is perfect, Silica fires a flame burst right away to intercept him. That is the strongest spell she has. Yet even that fails to pierce Gilist's mana armor. He is still intact, and their options are thinning. The remaining demons begin to close a ring around the party, and then ice magic erupts up from the cobbles, freezing every demon in the area solid. The caster is the ice hero Thurian, and he states he is here to ensure Claire's safety and keep her out of enemy hands. Up on a nearby cliff, the Count starts to worry his scheme will fall apart again, so he prepares to spread more magic dampening mist. Before he can act, Willie steps into view and interrupts him. The Count is surprised that anyone managed to track him all the way up here, so he asks what he wants, and Willie says the mist he is making is a real inconvenience, so he came to cut it off at the source. Back in the city, Thurian drops from above to meet the others, and he tells them they are ridiculously weak for S-rank adventurers, yet he will give them credit for keeping Claire safe up to now. Claire runs over to him with real excitement, and when Lloyd asks who the man is, she explains that he is her childhood friend Thurian, the ice hero. The others are surprised to learn that Thurian is a hero, and Lloyd adds that this would mean he is the emissary sent to collect Claire. That is not the case. In fact, Thurian technically is not supposed to be here, but he could not stand the idea of leaving Claire's safety to a bunch of lousy adventurers, so he showed up anyway. Claire tells Thurian that talking that way to the people who saved her life is not nice, and since he clearly has a soft spot for her, he calms down for now. Right then, Gilist breaks free from Thurian's ice, so Thurian tells everyone to stand back because he will handle this on his own. He sends another ice strike toward Gilist, but it barely has any effect. So Thurian understands he must take this fight seriously if he wants to beat him. Gilist is impressed with Thurian's skill, because not only is he casting without a chant, he is also using his own body as a catalyst without freezing himself solid. Thurian explains that his body has an affinity for all ice magic, and it has been that way ever since he was born. Even so, there is no point explaining the details to Gilist because he is going to be dead soon, so he keeps it short. Thurian then drops a large cluster of ice on top of him, and that actually scares Gilist enough to dodge, which confirms he can still be damaged. Afterwards, Thurian proceeds to launch a destructive barrage of ice at Gilist, forcing him to run all over the place to dodge. However, Lloyd notices something happening around Gilist's fist, and he soon realizes that he is preparing a concentrated mana punch. He knows how destructive that technique can be, so he warns everyone to take cover. But it is already too late for Thurian. Gilist has already closed in on him, so the only thing he can do is respond with an ice-infused punch, and the resulting blast is so devastating that Willie can feel it all the way up on that cliff. He had no idea Gilist had a trick of that sort up his sleeve, so it really catches him off guard, and while he is distracted, the Count manages to escape. Back in the town, Lloyd checks on everyone to make sure they are all right, and he can still sense the consciousness of his party members. Even so, he has no idea what happened to Claire and Thurian. He starts looking around for them, and to his horror, he spots Gilist with Claire in his arms, and he has already gotten an airship to escape with her right then. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed this recap, please hit the like button and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or tweaks, share them in the comments. They help me improve.